Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. If you were here at all this summer, then you know this is a passage that I preached on and through a couple times, actually. It's Romans 12, verses 9 through 13. But not only did I preach on it a couple times, then I went back and referenced it a few more times after that. And we actually, as a church, we meditated on this passage. And we were trying to collectively reflect on this passage multiple times throughout the summer. And here was the idea behind that is, all summer long, as we were talking about what it looks like to be people, if the love of God is flowing into us, and there's no lid on that, there's no cap on that, it just continues to pour. Even when we seem full, it just continues to pour because that's how the love of God works. Then there should be an overflow, right? And the question was all summer long, and the question this morning is going to be, well, what do we do with that overflow? As it's pouring out of us, who's it pouring into? And again, that passage for us, it just seemed like a really good picture of the overflow. It seemed like if we were people, if our love was sincere, if we were people who were clinging to what is good, if we were that kind of picture, that kind of thing, then man, that seems like a pretty good painting of God's love pouring into the people around us. So we're going to talk about that today, but if you were here last week, you also know this. We started a new series called All for the One, and it's more than just a new series. This is a new season for our church. We celebrated last week that over the previous half decade, over the last 5 years, we've seen 600 plus people come to know Jesus and be obedient in baptism. And we celebrated that last week, but also we pressed into a new challenge, a new vision, a new thing that God was laying on our heart as a church, and that was that we wanted to see that doubled over these next 5 years. We wanted to see 1,200, and we want to see 1,201 people come to know Jesus and be faithful and obedient in baptism. Now, again, if you're here for the first time and you're wondering what's the deal 1201, like I don't get the kind of weird number there. Well, again, it's a double from the previous 5 years, but we know this. Like I know this. If we were to say 1,200 people, a lot of us, you would just say, okay, cool. So the church must have some sort of like organizational structure or plan on how they're going to do this. And the truth is, we don't want this to be as much organizationally driven. Yes, there will be things that we're put in front of you and challenges and ways that we're going to continue to try and resource you and help you in this big, lofty vision. But more than it being organizational, we just want it to be organic. We want it to be about the relationships that you're investing, the people that you're connecting with, the people that you're loving. And so if we said 1,200, you just say, okay, cool, that's a big number. Someone will do that, I'm sure. No, it's 1,201. Who's your one? Or who's your two? Or your three? And so to build the intrigue for this, though, we did these sort of, throughout the summer, we did these pop-up events. And maybe you saw them on social media. We did, I think, 4 or 5 of them, and they look different. Like one time, we just said, hey, meet us for ice cream. We have like a 30-minute window. We'll get your ice cream and come. And we'd try to give little clues with these pop-up events. But a couple of them, we set out these boards, and we found different 1201 addresses around town, which was fun to ask those people, like, hey, can we set up a board? You don't know anything about this and your property. And they were like, okay. It was kind of crazy. But they looked like this. And we had these boards set up, and we just put the address out on social media, and we said, hey, come on out and check out. We got some merch there that we'll give away, and people did, and then we put these boards up. One of them said, the purpose of life is, and then we just had a bunch of blanks there. The other one said, before I die, and then we had a bunch of blanks there, and all sorts of people rolled all sorts of different things. A lot of these people are people who go to our church, but some are just passersby, just random folks who saw it and thought that they wanted to participate. And so here's what's cool is like, as you read through these, you see some really powerful stuff. Before I die, I want to fall in love. Before I die, I want to fulfill my purpose in the Lord. Before I die, I want to save a life. Like those are pretty big things. And then a couple weeks later, we put out the purpose one. We said, what's the purpose of life? And someone said, mind your business, which is rude, but People say to do as much good as possible, to do God's will, to love God and to love people, to teach and to learn, to win every day. That's cool. And here is, again, the idea behind these like existential boards. Yes, we're trying to build intrigue. We're trying to get people, trying to get you excited about this next season and sort of anticipating what it was going to be. But even more than that, we wanted to start to plant this seed of like, what's the purpose to all this? What's the purpose to life? James, the brother of Jesus, wrote this in the book of James. I believe in chapter 4, he said this. He said, life is short. He actually says it this way, life is just a mist. It's here and then it's gone. And if life is short, if it just comes and it goes, then maybe we should be thinking through things like this. Like, what are we supposed to do with our short time here on this earth? What are we supposed to do with the short time that we have? I guess I'll say it this way. What is the purpose of this life? Jesus, I think, is pretty clear. In the book of Mark, in chapter 12, Jesus, he's having conversation with his followers and with different folks, and in the midst of it, one of the teachers of the law approaches him. It says this in verse 28, Mark chapter 12. It says, one of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important one? Now, this happened all the time. Again, if you're here regularly, you hear me talk about this. The Pharisees, the teachers of the law, the Sadducees are always trying to catch Jesus in like an awkward moment or trying to get him in trouble somehow. And I don't even really know if that's what's happening here. It might just be general intrigue. But this teacher of the law, essentially, he says this, Jesus, like, what's the point? Again, we've talked about this in the past. There were 613 religious rules that a good Jewish person had to live up to. 613 laws as laid out in books like Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and you read this and you're just like, oh my goodness, how could anyone live these things? And there's so many of them. So here's this guy who approaches Jesus and he says, of all those 613 rules, which one's the most important? And here's what Jesus says. He says, the most important one is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So Jesus, again, a good Jew, they would build their lives around these 613 rules. I mean, everything was built around this. And if one was broken, then you went through their whole religious system. You had to sacrifice and bring an animal, and it had to go through a process. And it was just this whole system. There had to be priests and all this stuff. And Jesus asked, like in the midst of this thing that we've built our purpose around, we built our life around, what's the most important aspect of it? And here's how Jesus responds, very simply, very matter-of-factly. He says this, he says, love God and love people. That's it. It's almost like Jesus is saying this. If you're wondering what the purpose of life is, if you're trying to figure out why are you on earth, check it out. Love God, love people. And again, today as we're talking about the overflow, and we put this number of 1201 in front of you, in front of our church, and we said we want to be people who are going after the one. Here's what I want to do today is I want to get past it. I want to get past the number, and I want to talk about why every number has a name, every name has a story, every story matters to God. Today I want to talk about the overflow, the impact that we can have. And here's what Jesus says. He says, your purpose, the reason you're on earth, it's not about numbers, it's about loving God and loving people. It's about the overflow. It's about what you're doing with the love that God is pouring into you. Today we're going to get into this idea. We're going to talk about what it would look like if a teacher came to know Christ and how that would affect the way she leads her classroom or he leads his classroom. What it would look like if a father came to know Christ and how that would affect the way that he leads his family. Because when we're touched by light, it does something. When we live out overflow, It changes people. This isn't the only moment, though, in Mark where Jesus talks about this. He talks about it a lot. And I think one of my favorite visuals is in the book of Matthew in chapter 5. It's this moment, one of the more significant talks that Jesus ever gives, the Sermon on the Mount. And it's in this introduction on the Sermon on the Mount, right after these things called the Beatitudes, that Jesus sort of enters into this conversation about salt and light, and there's so much significance here, but here's what he says in Matthew chapter 5. He says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So again, this is a powerful passage. This is a passage where Jesus, it's an image that many of us, we've known our whole lives, because if you grew up in church or you went to Sunday school, because we sang the song and we know the image. I'm not gonna put my light under a bush, oh no, like that whole thing, right? But Jesus, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening here. Like let's just point this out. Jesus, in this passage, it's almost like preposterous to him, this idea of light being hidden. He says, certainly, if someone has light, they wouldn't cover it up with a bowl. You wouldn't do that. But I started to think about how you and I, so often, as we're efforting to be an overflow, as we're efforting to go after our one, as we're efforting to be people who are living out light and living out the goodness of God in our day-to-day actions, I think the tendency sometimes, because of fear, because of how we're gonna be received, because of all of that, we have this tendency. Jesus says, like, it's so preposterous. You certainly wouldn't do this, put a bowl over light, but you know what a lot of us do? You know what I have a tendency to do? Cover it. Jesus says, what a crazy idea. I think for a lot of us, it's a reality. When all around us, have you ever been in a really dark room? I know you have. Remember when you were a kid, you were playing hide and seek, and someone would get the idea to turn out all the lights? It was kind of scary. And it wasn't just because maybe at that time you were scared of the dark, but it was a little scary because you didn't know where you were stepping. You didn't know, and so you're kind of feeling your way around. You didn't know if someone was hiding around a corner. You didn't know if you were gonna step into a corner and hurt yourself. You didn't know if you were going up or down stairs. It's a little bit terrifying. And here's what we know, and the imagery is over and over and over throughout the Gospels, throughout Scripture, that this world that we exist in is walking around in darkness. And it's like there are an awful lot of people that we know and that we love who are doing this sort of thing, and they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to navigate this life, but it's a lot of darkness. And Jesus says, now you and we're called to be light. You and we're called to sort of penetrate that darkness. And it's a beacon of hope. It's a beacon of opportunity. It's a beacon of rescue. It's a beacon it's walking in assuredness, with sure stepping. But I want to go back to this just really quick. In verse 16, he says, in the same way, let your light shine before others. So you and me, we say, okay, well, but why? And then Jesus says, that they may see your good deeds. And then you and I will say, well, why? And then he says this, so that they'll glorify our Father in heaven. Here's what's at stake. Jesus is saying, when people see your light, when people see you acting and seeking and striving to be a person who lives with light, with overflow, there are deeds, there are things, there are actions attached to that. But here's what happens. He says, then they will come to glorify our Father in heaven. Meaning they come to find Jesus. There's significance to this light thing. And so here it is. This is the thing that I've been praying as I've been preparing this message. Here it is. My prayer today is I want you to leave more inclined than you've ever been before. I want you to leave today more inclined than you've ever been before to be light in darkness. So this is where you say, well, Ryan, I'm a little nervous about that. I don't know what that looks like. Can you walk me through it? Yep, let's do it. We got 3 things, because I'm a preacher and we do things in threes. Here we go. Ryan, what does it look like to be light? If you like to write stuff down, this might be it. This might be something that you could write down. Here it is. The first thing is this. If you want to be light, our lives have to reflect Jesus. Let's start there, not with the things that we're saying necessarily. Let's start with the life that we're living. Is your life reflecting Jesus? I'm not trying to step on toes, not trying to be a big rude guy up here, okay? But let's just call it what it is. There's some of you, last week we handed out these keychains, and I asked you, I said, I want you to project the face of someone that you love, someone that you want to lead to Christ, someone that you want to share the gospel with, not because it's a number, but because you love them and you know there's hope in Jesus. I want you to project that face onto that thing, and I want you to be praying for them, and I want you to begin to effort in sharing the gospel with them. But again, there's some of us, here's the problem. You said, yep, I'm gonna do that. Here's the problem. At your work, everybody knows you as the person with the worst attitude. And in your neighborhood, you are the gossip. And in your marriage or in your household, you have zero grace for anyone. And there is very little Christ being seen in the life that you're living. And so there's some of you that you're gonna do this. You're gonna say, okay, here I go. I got this person I'm praying for. I got my keychain thing, and here we go. I'm gonna pray for them. And so you're gonna sit down with them over lunch or over coffee or over dinner or over a beer or whatever. And you're gonna sit down with them and you say, okay, here we go. I'm gonna do it. And you're gonna share that. You're gonna say, hey, I want you to know that I love Jesus. And they're gonna say, what? You're like, yeah, I love Jesus. And I just wanted to tell you kind of about my faith. Maybe you could come to church with me or whatever sometime. And they're gonna say, hold on. You're the person every time we hang out in social settings that drinks too much. You're the person we all have to take care of. Hold on, you're the person that at work is talking horrible about everybody. Hold on a second. You want me to be like you? You see what I'm saying? If you want to be light, let's just start there. As a matter of fact, again, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying you're never going to make a mistake. But I think there might be some of us that as you've been processing this all for the one thing, maybe it's this realization. Before it's someone else, it's you. Maybe you're one. Maybe before you go and you need to, and you're trying to share the gospel with the people around you, maybe before you go and you're trying to be light to the people, maybe you need to make a decision for Jesus yourself. Maybe it's a decision that you made a long time ago and you need to recommit to it. Maybe you've never made that decision. You stumbled in here last week and you're like, this is all crazy, but I think I'm on board. Here we go. And you need to make that decision. Well, next week, here it is. Next week, we're going to have a baptism celebration Sunday. These are my favorite Sundays. It's going to be a party in here. And if you're a person who's never made a decision for Jesus and you're here today and you're saying, I want to go all in for Jesus, but you've never been baptized, I'm going to challenge you to take that step of faith yourself. But for the rest of us, I'm going to challenge you. Let's be people who are reflecting Jesus in our day-to-day so that the things we communicate have some actual weight to the people we're communicating them to. Here's the second thing. Ryan, how can I be light? Here it is. Set your default mode to love. I have an iPhone, right? And when I walk into this building, because it's set up this way, my phone automatically, by default, just connects to the Wi-Fi. Like most of yours, that's why none of our Wi-Fi works on Sunday morning, right? And so it just automatically. And then when I go home, it does the same thing. And then when I go sometimes to some friend's house, because at some point my son wanted to get on their Wi-Fi and he wanted to use my phone, so it'll connect to there. And it just by default, it just does this, right? It's just a natural way of things. It just happens. And when I look at Jesus, when I look at how he navigates and walks through in the first century, when he's just doing his thing, when he's being Jesus, what I see is someone who just lived by default in love. He loved people that others thought shouldn't be loved. He loved people that others considered outside of religion, outside of love. He loved people that thought themselves they shouldn't be loved. And Jesus said, I'm gonna love you too. It was his default. And here's what this should look like for you and I. This means that you and I, in the way that we act, the way that we live, the way that we engage people, our default should be that we're giving people the benefit of the doubt. Which in our society, 2019, we don't do that. We want to string people up as quick as we can. It means giving mercy instead of judgment, offering grace instead of wrath. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Our default should be love. That's how Jesus lived. That was his function. Now, here's what's interesting, though. There come moments where I'll walk in and none of us can get on the Wi-Fi. And so what do I have to do? I have to get in there manually if there's something I need to do, and I have to switch it over, right? And I got to figure out another way to communicate. See, there are some moments in Jesus' ministry where he sort of manually, his default mode is love, but then there are some times when he sort of manually, and I even think there's love under all of this, but he's like, all right, I got to turn some tables now. All right, I got to put these teachers of the law in their place. But even that's like there's this undertone of love. Man, we got to give people the benefit of the doubt. Here's the third thing, and I talked about this a little bit last week, and I'll talk about it a little bit more now. If you want to be a person who's exuding and living overflow and there's light pouring out of you, lean into opportunity. Or better yet, create opportunity. Again, I talked about this last week. I talked about how this is sometimes a little bit awkward for me as a pastor. Because when people find out that I'm a pastor, they just get weird. Like automatically, like, oh, you're a pastor, and then they get weird. And so often, just honestly, candidly, I struggle with that sometimes because I don't want to be weird. And so I've leaned away from opportunities to share love, to share truth, to share the gospel, to invite someone to church. I'll lean away because I don't want to seem like I'm like too much, right? And so one of the things that I've been working through, and again, I shared this last week, but one of the things that I've been challenging myself with is, Ryan, when those opportunities are presented to you, when someone is talking to me and somehow the conversation goes there, I want to lean in to those moments instead of away. And I want to challenge you to do the same. But let me go one further. For some of us, see, for my keychain here, I have 3 names that I'm thinking of. I have 3 people that I'm praying for and investing in, and so for me, it's not all for the one, it's all for the 3. And to be quite honest, most of my friends are believers, and so these are people from the gym that I'm just trying to lean in and grow relationship in. But for some of you, your 1 or your 2, it's like your best friend. It's your mom or your dad or a sibling. It's a coworker. It's someone that you have already built a high level of trust with. It's someone that you already have a deep, deep relationship. It's someone that they love you, they know things about you. See, we do this, and I've referenced this before, I've talked about this before, because sometimes it frustrates me. We do this as believers where we'll say, Jesus, would you provide this opportunity for me? Would you provide this opportunity? And we pray and we pray and we pray, and it's like, I think there are times when God just says, stop praying about it and just do it. So again, some of us, we just need to pray and lean into those opportunities. Others of us, if we're talking about like your best friend, we're talking about someone that you've already built deep, meaningful relationship with, someone that you love and that they love you and that there's trust there. Just invite them to church already. Create the opportunity. This week, just say, can we just meet for coffee? And share your spiritual story with them. Share your faith journey with them. Share your testimony with them. Stop praying about it because it extends the runway, and just grab the opportunity. So I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to put a pretty big challenge in front of you right now. We live in a day and age where social media is just like taken over. Technology is taken over. I'm horrible at technology. I don't know how anything works, but I can manage social media. If you're looking around like, really? It's 2019. Wake up. So we started thinking, like, what are ways that we can use this for the gospel? So here's my challenge to you. This week, I want you to lean into this opportunity. This week, at some point, I don't care when, I don't care what it looks like necessarily, but here's what I want you to do. Sometime this week, I want you to get your phone out, and I want you to shoot a video of your testimony. Now, it probably shouldn't be 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, okay? No one's gonna watch that. As compelling as you may be as a communicator, I'm not gonna watch that, okay? 5 minutes. I want you to share your testimony. And again, some of you are looking at me and you're saying, Ryan, I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know how to do that. How do I tell my testimony? Here's what it is. This is what my life was like before Jesus. So that's step one. You can write this down. This is what my life was like before Jesus. This is how I met Jesus. Someone invested in me. Someone met me for coffee and shared the gospel with me. Someone invited me to church. My mom raised me this way to believe this thing. This is how I met Jesus, and then this is what my life looked like after I came to know Christ. That's it. 3 steps. Again, my challenge is this week for you to do that. And some of you are gonna do that. Some of you are gonna say, yes, I'm all in, all for the one, let's go. And then others of you, you're gonna take that bowl and you're gonna put it over your light. But what if you didn't? What if we use the opportunities that we had before us to share our faith, to present it to the people around us? So we have a young lady who just joined our staff. Her name is Emily. And she's great. She's awesome. She's been on staff for 2 weeks or something. And we were like, hey, Emily, you're new. Do you want to do this thing for us? Can you share your testimony? You'll be our guinea pig, and you can do it on your social media. And she was like, okay, sure. And so she did it. Just to give you guys kind of a picture of how this might look, this is Emily's story.
So I just wanted to share something with you. This is awkward for me. So there it is. I guess a while back, I believed in God. I grew up in a Christian home. I knew what living for Christ looked like, and I felt like I never really got to that point in my life. And so when I started college, I thought, this is a great restart. I'm going to be the person that I want to be. And then starting college, I got into all of the same things that I was into in high school, which is being a people pleaser, seeking attention and love and joy in my relationships with people, which was all the wrong places. It left me empty and broken. It left me doing things that I never thought I would do in life. And I was in sin a lot. I just remember feeling a lot of guilt and shame, and then feeling nothing, feeling numb to my sinful life. And that was a scary place. I remember sitting in my college cafeteria and thinking about all of it. And then all of a sudden I just had this booming thought come across my mind. And it was just a thought I couldn't ignore. And I knew then it was from God. And he said, if you keep going down this path, you're going to lose me. And that really shook me. And I just remember responding to it and just saying, okay, then I give it to you. And in that moment, I really just sacrificed my life for Christ and partnered with him. And I remember feeling this sense of peace, love, all the things that I was searching for. I remember feeling in that moment and feeling like I needed nothing else. So 2 weeks after that moment, I found my husband and I found my best friend. It's just funny that I did have a thought come across my brain in that moment that I might be lonely, but I remember also being completely okay with it because I had Christ and it is all I needed. But yet, then he blessed me with that. And it's not to say that you're going to find your husband or your best friend as soon as you sacrifice your life for Christ, but he really does want to bless you. And he's meant so much to me in life. Life just seems easy now, even though I've had tragedy and hardships. I just feel rooted down now. So if you're curious about that or want more information, comment, message me. And I'm sharing this because I love you guys and I want this for you too.
Could we give her a round of applause for doing that? So again, here's your challenge. See, I really do believe this. I think it's not our lack of knowledge or our lack of understanding about theological things that keeps us from sharing our faith. It's often just a lack of courage. And Emily, she even said, she's like, this is gonna be kind of awkward for me, but I'm gonna try this. She just stepped out in faith. So your challenge is just shoot a testimony video. Post it to your social media this week. We asked, I think it was Tuesday, Emily did that. And this is just so cool, guys. This is how God works. Within hours of her posting that, she had a family member reach out to her and say, hey, can you tell me more about your relationship with Jesus? Imagine the opportunity that we could have as a church if we're willing not to cover up that light, but to expose it to the people around us. So if you would be so bold, I'm going to challenge you to do that. See, I want to close with an illustration. I have a mirror hidden down here. I'm not going to smash it. Everybody. I was talking a little while back, I was talking to a guy that has only attended our church on Easter and Christmas. And he was like, every time I'm there, you're smashing stuff. And I was like, that's a good point. I've never realized that. So let's bring the lights down. You and I are called to be a reflection of Christ. Let's put some light on this. So it's like this. You and I are called to be light in darkness. The world around us is searching for light. I'm gonna blind some of y'all. They don't even know what they're searching for, but you have it. And you and I have an opportunity, but I would go one step further. We have an obligation to be light to darkness, to penetrate the darkness. See, I had this friend, Nathan, when I was a pastor out in Colorado. He was a part of our life group. But Nathan wasn't a believer. He just came because his wife made him. Maybe like some of you today. Nathan was a good dude, though. But he was also, he was skeptical. And so every time we met together, it would often get derailed when our group would meet. Our studies would sort of spin off into these side conversations because he was skeptical. And sometimes, if I'm being honest, it was a little bit annoying because I just wanted to stay on point. But the reality is, Nathan sometimes would opt after work, instead of coming home to be with his wife and his kids, to go to the bar and have a few drinks. And things were a little bit out of sync. And over time, because there was a group of people investing in Nathan, because there was a group of people praying for Nathan and loving Nathan and being light to Nathan. Well, we were doing a baptism Sunday, like we do here and like we're going to do next week. And there are all these people coming down, and I'm in the baptistry, and it's so exciting, and all these people are coming to know Christ. They're being obedient in baptism. It was just this amazing moment. And then here's Nathan. He's climbing in, and it caught me off guard. And I looked at him, and I said, dude, are you sure? And it's like the only time I've ever tried to talk someone out of. And he had tears in his eyes, and he just looked at me, and he said, yeah, man, it's time. And the transformation in Nathan's life was unbelievable. And he went from being this person who, again, he was a good guy, but he was searching and sometimes keeping the people he loved at a distance, to now he's a spiritual leader in his home. I have a friend here at the church. Good dude, very similar, pretty skeptical, very analytical. And for a while, it wasn't clicking with him, the whole Jesus thing. But he had men here at the church who were investing in him and who loved him and who were unconditionally there for him. And over time, my buddy's skepticism started to melt away. And he gave himself to Christ. And now, man, this dude is on fire. He volunteers downtown at the Refuge of Hope. And like I pray often every Sunday before I preach, Lord, let these be your words, not my words. This buddy of mine, that's his prayer every day as he encounters individuals who need light. He's on fire for the gospel. I have one more friend. I've told his story before. His name's Steve. He was a guy I met also when I was out in Colorado. And Steve, I met 2 weeks before his divorce was to be final. Steve drank a little too much and had made some bad decisions and put priorities in the wrong place. And his wife left with their 2 kids, and he was heartbroken. And he came in and he didn't know what to do. He didn't know where to turn. He had no faith. He was a mess. He was an absolute mess. And he looked at me and he said, Ryan, I don't know what to do. I don't even know why I'm here. This whole church thing, it's kind of new to me. And I said, dude, you need Jesus. And he gave himself to Christ. And guys, he gave himself to Christ. And this is a God thing. This is just how God works. 2 days before their court date, 2 days before the divorce was to be final, Steve and his wife had just one last connection. Or at least he thought it was going to be. And in that moment, his wife recognized something different about him. She recognized that there was something stirring in him. And it was Jesus. And she gave him another chance. And their marriage actually now has been restored, and this amazing couple leads mission trips all over the world. They travel all over the world to share the gospel with people. Guys, this is more than a number. This is more than a numeric goal we're putting in front of you. This is about people. This is about life change. This is about what happens when light penetrates darkness. But I want you to notice something. Right now, I'm just reflecting one light. And some of us in the room, we're gonna go do this. We're gonna embrace this. We're gonna say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna be light to the people around me. I'm gonna be light to my coworkers, to my neighbors, to my friends. I'm gonna be light. I'm gonna try to live out this gospel message. I'm gonna do everything I can to go all in for the one. And if 1 or 2 or 3 of us do it, okay, cool, it'll look like this, but there's an awful lot of darkness still. And it's hard to penetrate darkness with just 1 or 2 or 3 or a little bit of light. But guys, what would it look like? And here's my question for you. What would it look like if each of us, if every single one of us chose to be light? If every single one of us said, I'm going to live with a default of love? What would it look like if every single one of us said, I'm all in for the one? I think it's more than just 1 or 2 lights shining through the darkness, I think it looks a little bit more like this.